Especially, I hope the young people will latch on to some important ideas and develop them further as they grow older and wiser.
Voice is coming.
The first idea that I would like to expose you to is the idea of history. As we know, the way history is taught, a compendium of facts, events, who did what to whom, who conquered what territory in what year. And then if you're really interested in history, you're exposed to the various theories of history. The first one to expose a theory of history was Ibn Khaldun. Around the year 1385, the great man that he was. And we have talked about the theory of Asabiya, how Asabiya fosters civilization. We have also briefly touched upon the rise and fall of civilizations, such as that of Toynbee, where he talks about challenge and response. As opposed to all of these theories, the Quranic approach is very different. The Quranic approach, this is very important, especially for the young people. The Quranic approach is based upon faith. It is not challenge, it is not response, it is not asabiya, it is not the race that I belong to or a tribe that I belong to that determines whether or not a civilization survives. The moving principle of a civilization in Islam is faith. Please remember that. Even in recent years, for instance, Allama Iqbal came up with a theory that the moving principle of a civilization is ijtihad. And that was the basis for the formation of Pakistan later on. A grand movement of the 20th century. But ijtihad is only a process. The ocean is faith. You believe in Allah, then from that you draw the energy, and that energy propels you to overcome the challenges that you face, or to come up with new discoveries, chart out new horizons as you go through the travails of human life. Faith is the moving principle of civilization. And that's also the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you don't have to go too far. If you just read the opening chapter, not the opening chapter, but the second chapter, Surah Al-Baqarah, in the first few ayahs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it very clear that those who have faith in the unseen, etc., these are the ones who are going to prosper. They are the ones who are going to see an increase in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestows upon them. Please remember that. And we will see how, in today's presentation, faith enabled the Muslims to overcome the challenges that they faced in the 13th century when they came very close to getting completely decimated. I mean, decimated. That's one. The second thought that I want the young people to know is this: is we study the Crusades. When you think of Crusades, immediately Jerusalem and Salahuddin and King Richard III, very, very important. Sometimes you hear about the Mongols or the Tatars. People don't know the difference between them. I'll point out to you that the Mongols are not the same as Tatars and so on. But the important thing I want you to remember is this. Very few people, very few Muslims, I should say, understand the simultaneity of the Crusades and the Mongol invasions. They happened about the same time. And between them, they decimated almost 75% of the Islamic world. That's the second thing, happened about the same time. And the third thing that I wish to communicate to you is that even in its darkest hour, when Muslims had lost everything, most of their major centers of learning and so on, the intrinsic faith that they had showed itself through the awliya Allah in the 13th century. And I'll name the names. And it was this civilization which lasted for almost 400 years until the 17th century, until it took another detour in a different direction. These are the three important ideas for today. So now let's go back to some of the details, because I'll repeat these ideas so that our young people really remember them. You know what happened in 1187? That was Salahuddin Ayyubi. Salahuddin Ayyubi, having brought an end to the Fatimid dynasty in Cairo, managed to combine and bring together the provinces of Egypt and Syria. And that combination was strong enough to expel the Crusaders from Jerusalem in the year 1187. But remember, as I pointed out the last time, the Crusades were not directed only at the Eastern Mediterranean. And one of the sisters made a good suggestion. If we had a good map in here, the young people could visualize. Unfortunately, we don't have a map. So bear with me. Maybe next time I'll see if we can bring a big map and show you the interrelationship between events in the world. One of the deficiencies in the way we teach history to our children is that we isolate it. We teach them the history of India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran. No. You have to teach them world history, because events are interrelated. History is infinitely elastic. That's a scientific statement. 1187, Jerusalem was conquered. 1191, 1192, the Ghawrids conquered Delhi, advancing from Kabul to Lahore to Delhi. So for the first time, India comes under a Muslim domain 5 years later, after Salahuddin. And then in the far west, in the Maghrib, don't forget the Crusades were directed more at Spain than they were directed towards the Eastern Mediterranean, because Spain was right there. And the Crusades went on in Spain for almost 400 years. And ultimately resulted in the loss of Spain to Islam and the gain of Spain to the Crusaders. In the year 1196, which is 9 years after Salahuddin, or 4 years after the conquest of Delhi, the Almohads of the Maghrib defeated the conquistadores, that is the Crusaders, at the Battle of Alarcos in Spain. And they were able to push back the Spaniards towards the north. So within a span of 10 years, you see, my goodness, good things from the Islamic perspective, Muslim perspective. Good things are happening in the east, central portion of the Muslim world, and in the far west, there victory after victory. And yet it's astonishing that within a generation after that, the Islamic world came to annihilation and extinction as close as it did at the Battle of Badr. And let me point out what happened. First, in 1212, which is only, you see, you can add up these numbers. 1212 is only
13 years.
16 years after the Battle of Alarcos. The Almohads lost a major battle in Spain. Very major battle. So much so that the manpower of the Maghrib, that is the manpower from Morocco, Algeria, Mauritania, many Africans were there, bled. Almost 100,000 Muslims died in that battle. The Battle of Las Novas de Tolosa. It is somewhat north of the present city of Sevilla or Seville. That was the beginning of the end of Muslim rule in Spain, not the fall of Granada, which took place in 1492. 1212. If you want to understand Spain, go back to 1212. But that was just the beginning. Now let's come to the eastern part of the Islamic world. Things get to be very, very interesting there. You see, in the meantime also, I'll throw a few insights so that our young people really grasp onto this very fascinating period. In the year 1204, that is about 18 years, 16 years after losing Jerusalem, the Christians never gave up the idea of reconquering Jerusalem. But they had no money. Europe was broke. Europe had nothing in the 13th century. All the candlesticks the princes had, and the candlesticks that they could find in the churches were not enough to finance one single crusade. Europe was broke. So in the year 1204, and this is just a side comment in here, the Pope decides to launch another crusade. That was the fourth crusade. Please remember this. Very important point. 1204. A little old guy, his name was Dondolo. Nobody knows that name. But probably he was as important as any in Western civilization. Dondolo. This little guy, he entices all of Europe to launch the fourth crusade, but instead of going after Jerusalem, where there was not much money left after all the looting that they had done for 100 years, they directed it towards Constantinople. Constantinople was Christian. It was Eastern Orthodox. It was rich. It was the capital of Eastern Orthodox Empire. 1204. Captured it, destroyed it, looted it, went into Hagia Sophia, and they had, if you read the accounts of what they did, terrible things. They brought in women to dance in Hagia Sophia and the dais of the churches. They took all the wealth of Constantinople back to the cities of Italy, and that was the beginning of the Renaissance. 1204, not 1500. The loot that the Latin Church did of the Eastern Orthodox Church, not the Muslims and the Christians, people don't know this. They looted their own people. I went back. Now let's go advance a little further. It might be a few years. 1215. In faraway Central Asia, you have the rise of the Mongols under Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan consolidates the tribes. They were nomads. See, here history is very fascinating. People think of nomads as, oh my goodness, they moved from one place to the other, etc. But you know who the real driver of nomads is? The goats. You take a goat. How does a goat eat the grass? From the roots. Once the roots are gone, they have to move. It's not that they wanted to move. They were dependent on goats. They would move. They were nomads. He consolidated in 1215. Remember, this is all happening within a span of 20 years. 1215, Genghis Khan conquers northern China. Now, why is that important? Northern China gave the Mongols the following technologies. One, the use of gunpowder. Now, I did a lot of work on high energy materials, so I'm not going to tell you all the secrets of high energy materials. But at that time, the primary use of gunpowder was to attach to the tip of an arrow. If you shoot an arrow through air, depending on the velocity and the way you light the gunpowder and what kind of composition you had, it gives out some sound. And that sound was used for communication in the thick of battle. Gunpowder. Secondly, they learned the use of defensive armor. This defensive armor was made of silk. Why is silk that important? Because when you shoot an arrow at silk armor, it is called viscoelastic. It gives, it doesn't penetrate. See, it doesn't go and get stuck. It gives. That was the second thing. Third thing, they learned the art of siege engines. That's to tunnel. Dig a tunnel, put a little high energy material, poof, goes up. So they gained technology from northern China. Now, what does that have to do with Islamic history? Here, what happens? In 1218, Genghis Khan buys some stocks of some of the traders in Khiva, which was in Central Asia, just north of Samarkand. But the governor of Khorasan, you can look up the names, it's all in my encyclopedia. He suspects these merchants were sent by Genghis Khan to be spies. So he seeks the permission of the Shah of Khwarazm. His name was Muhammad Shah. Remember the name? A very ignominious name in Islamic history. And I'll also point out how brave his sons were, like Jalaluddin and Afghan. He sought permission from the king of Khorasan, if you would. He was not the king, but he was the governor also, because the real king was in Baghdad, Khalifa, to behead these three merchants. And he beheads them. Genghis Khan hears about it and he says, well, look, you have done something wrong to my people, and I want this governor of this Khiva so that I can punish him. So his emissaries go to Muhammad Shah. Muhammad Shah, instead of giving him an answer, has that emissary beheaded. And here Genghis Khan says, okay, that's too much. Now there's cause for war. Genghis Khan was a leader par excellence. I hope the young people are learning. You see, I'm going to pass on things that will be useful to you when you become presidents of companies. You know what the difference is between ordinary people and great people? What's the difference? Very good. One of the major differences is that great people pay attention to details. Great scientists pay attention to details. Great scholars pay attention to details. Napoleon paid attention to details. Alexander paid attention to details. Umar Abdul Khattab radiallahu anhu paid attention to details. Genghis Khan paid attention to details in planning an invasion of the Islamic world. What were some of the details? Every man had to have 2 horses. Every man had to have 2 stirrups. Every man had to have so many different arrows, etc., etc., down to how much ration he was going to carry, how he was going to feed himself, details. He descended in the year 1219. 1219, remember the dates I'm giving you. Within a generation, all these things are happening so fast. The first battle, this man, Shah Muhammad, you see, this is another comment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has 99 names in the Quran. All those names are befitting of the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In His Majesty, He has delegated some of those attributes to human beings. What are some of those attributes? Rahma, we also feel compassion. Wudda, love, we also feel love. It's given to us by Him. Some indication of our will delegated to us. But there are other attributes that were not delegated, and when a human being takes on those attributes, he destroys himself. One of those attributes is takabbur. When a man has takabbur, he is destroyed. He's gone. You know what takabbur is? Now I'm asking the young people. I want you to understand, not just sit there. Takabbur is haughtiness. I'm the greatest. The Pharaoh had it. Takabbur destroys a human. It is very befitting for the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
The gentleman mentioned.
No, it's Trump is one of those.
Takabbur is not befitting. And this man, Muhammad Shah, had takabbur. He met, yes.
Iblis was the first one.
Iblis was the first one. Yes, takabbur. No. One must be humble. Humility is befitting of a human being, not takabbur. One must be, that's the reason we stand before Allah. So this man, in his haughtiness, he faced Genghis Khan in one battle. He did not win, it was like a draw, but he declared, I won the battle, and he distributed sweets. Then he took his army, divided into several different parts, and holed himself up in one city after the other. And Genghis Khan attacked each of the cities, and each time he conquered, 99%, according to Ibn Kathir, 99% of the people of the great cities of the Islamic world, starting with the Amu Darya, which is in Central Asia, all the way to Dajla and Farad, which is Tigris and Euphrates, were killed. See, first when I read these numbers, as a scientist, I said, how is it possible for 99% of the people of a country to die? If you want to understand it, go to New Mexico. You'll go across vast areas where not a single person lives. And once in a while you see a hamlet here, then you come to a little town. So what used to happen was if somebody invades, these people in the outlying areas would go inside the fortress and hold themselves in. When the fortress fell, I was there in Bukhara. You can still feel the vibrations from that great wall wherein he killed apparently 14,000 people. It was a large number at the time. You put your hand in there and listen to it with your heart. You can still feel the wailing of the people. 1,000 years later, Genghis Khan destroyed the following countries. You start with Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan up to the Indus River, Iran, Eastern Turkey, Iraq. Within a matter of 1 year. Destroyed meaning destroyed. Libraries burned. Dams destroyed. Men of education taken as prisoners. Women abused. The Mongols remade world history. They remade the races of humankind. Even in Afghanistan, northern Afghanistan, you see many people who have Mongol features, thanks to Genghis Khan. And it did not stop with the death of Genghis Khan. This is 1222. See how fast these things are happening? The Mongols came back again and again and again, revisiting these areas and destroying them again and again. They had no use for agriculture. They had no use for learning. They had no use for civilization. They had their own belief system, shamanist. The name Khan is not a Muslim name, but in India, Pakistan, it's the most common name. But anyway, so now, after the death of Genghis Khan, I'm going to walk you through very rapidly because I want to give you the gems so that you have a chance to reflect upon them. The Mongol kingdom was divided into 5 parts. First was China, the second was Mogolistan, which is based in Mongolia, and then Central Asia, based around Samarkand and Bukhara. Then it was the Ilkhans, based in Iran, and then it was Russia. Russia also became Mongol. And one of them, 20 years later, was Hulagu Khan. And I'll come to Hulagu Khan and the destruction that he wrought. In the meantime, what happened was that the Christians, seeing an opportunity to get even with the Muslims and get even for the loss of Jerusalem, made a bold ideological move to convert the Mongols. They sent delegations. There were delegations sent by the Pope. Delegations were sent by Constantinople, the Eastern Orthodox Church. Delegations were sent by the king of the Armenians. Delegations were also sent by the French king. In addition, they supplied them women and the possibility of working together to get rid of this common enemy. So now you have a tug of war. Central Asia was also Buddhist. A tug of war, a civilizational tug of war between Christianity, Buddhism, and Islam for the soul of the Mongol. This went on for almost 30 years. But in the meantime, the military situation also continues moving. Hulagu Khan was mandated with the capture and destruction of Baghdad, and to move on further to capture and annihilate the Islamic world. In 1258, he sent word to the Khalifa asking him to surrender. If my memory serves me right, I think his name was Al-Mu'tasim. But anyway, you can look up the name. This man was another one of those gentlemen, the Khalifa at the time, who had takabbur in him and a fatalist at the same time. Not only did he reject any kind of offer of treaty or anything like that, he in turn insulted the Mongols, and he said, I'm not even going to raise an army. I'll leave it in the hands of Allah. Whatever happens, happens in the hands of Allah. Remember, my young friends, the hadith. People don't understand hadith. People argue about hadith. This is correct, this is not correct. Now, what we have to do is to look at the inner meaning of hadith. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ says, and it's narrated in many different ways, trust in Allah, but tie your camel. Sometimes it's narrated as tie your camel and trust in Allah. The hadith expands what is in the Quran. In other words, it is not just trust in Allah. Yes, you must trust in Allah, but take action. And it's the same thing when people say, to me, oh, I'll leave it to Allah. Whatever happens, happens. I'm not going to study for the exam. Who was? Like Muhammad said, whatever happens, well, pay attention, not just the Quran, the Sunnah of the Prophet. So this Khalifa, he said that, and he got annihilated. 1258, complete destruction of Baghdad. Chroniclers, historians record that at least 1 million people were killed in Baghdad alone. Libraries destroyed. Scholars disappeared. The waters of Tigris River were red with blood and were filled with papers and deerskin, books. Mosques pulled down. Baghdad, which was the city built up over 600 years, the pearl of Islamic civilization, destroyed. 1258, Hulagu Khan. He didn't stop there. He wanted to move on, capture Jerusalem, Makkah and Medina, and extirpate Islam. Extirpate means to, like a goat eating the grass. He continues his advance into Syria and Palestine. Once the Khilafat in Baghdad fell, there were only the following areas of the Islamic world still standing. You had the Mamluks in India. I explained to you who the Mamluks were, and I hope you remember all of these things. Nice stories. Remember them? Yes? Oh, you should remember. You should remember. You're not going to hear these things very often. The Mamluks of India. But India was still in its infancy, Delhi. The Mamluks of Egypt. And of course the Ayyubids were in power, but the Mamluks were the real power in Egypt. And you had the budding empires in Mali, in Africa. So the two Mamluks were the only ones holding back the Mongols in their vile desire to extirpate Islam. The Mongols advanced towards Jerusalem. After capturing Damascus, a major battle was fought at Ain Jalut, which is in the outskirts, on the northern outskirts of Jerusalem. Incidentally, Palestine is a beautiful country. If you have a chance to visit it. It's beautiful. Ain Jalut, one of the major battles in world history, just as the Battle of Tours or the Battle of Plassey determined the fate of humankind, or the Battle of Stalingrad during the Second World War. Ain Jalut, fought between the Mamluks of Egypt and the Mongols. Baybars, who was the commander-in-chief of the Mamluk armies of Egypt, prevailed. Major battle. You can read about it. That was the first time the Mongols had been defeated, and the Mongol menace gradually receded. Did not disappear, gradually receded. Sometimes you read about stories about Ibn Taymiyyah and others intervening and helping out, going on the battle and so on. Ibn Taymiyyah was not born a year after the Battle of Ain Jalut. People say things, including scholars, without juxtaposing how is it possible for a newborn to have intervened in a battle that took place 1 year before his birth. In any case, Battle of Ain Jalut. This tug of war between the Christians and the Muslims and the Buddhists continues. Now I will change my story a little bit for the next 15 minutes as to how, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, faith prevails. Faith enables a civilization to survive. In the year 1252, this is 6 years before the fall of Baghdad, one of the princes of the Russian portion of the Mongol Empire, his name was Baraka Khan. Baraka Khan. See, the Westerners don't even tell you the names. They corrupt the names. Burke Khan, Burkha Khan. Baraka Khan, his name was. He met some tradesmen near Bukhara. And remember, now you don't have the alims and the fazils and so on. All you have these few huts that the Sufis had established. Now I'll come to how this Allah's grace is infinitely unfathomable. I'll give you just some ideas, some hints about how this whole thing came about. It's like a beautiful, beautiful story. Comes across these three merchants, he's impressed with them, and then he registers to study at a seminary in Bukhara. You don't change your faith because you met some merchants. Come on. He studied at the same seminary as Baba Farid of Lahore. Is there any Pakistanis here? Baba Farid? Yes.
Ganj.
Baba Farid and Baraka Khan had the same alma mater. How's that? This way you'll remember. He studied there for 3 years. Then he became a Muslim. 1252, 1253, 3, 4, 5 years before the fall of Baghdad. He goes back to Russia, and then he sends emissaries to the Mamluks of Egypt and says, look, this guy, bad guy, Hulagu Khan, he wants to attack Baghdad. I'm going to help you. There's a little tussle between these Mongols, the Mongols who were ruling Iran and the Mongols who were ruling Russia, that helped the Mamluks of Egypt some. But that's not the end of the story. If you read it, fascinating. About 30, 40 years or so, the balance of world history hung by a thread. The Christians did not give up. Again and again, they sent emissaries to the great Khan in Karakoram, in Mogolistan, to entice him to become Christian. And indeed, for a long time, there was a lot of Christian influence. Not only did some of the queens of the great Khan sent by the Christians were Christian, but 2 or 3 of their senior ministers were also Christian. However, the conversion first of Baraka Khan, and gradually back and forth by the year 1295, the conversion of Ghazan the Great. I call him the Great because he changed world history. He was the prince, Mongol prince of Ilkhans, ruling now over what is today Iran, Afghanistan, Central Asia, Iraq. He accepts Islam, and the tide now turns decidedly in favor of Islam. So you have to ask yourself, as thinking people, how is it possible? You know, we talk about dawah. Oh, I'm going to wear this cap. This is my dawah. We do these kinds of things. But when you really study these people, their hearts, what separated them from us is what was in their heart. And this is but a brief introduction to that stream that comes to us through our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. See, the Westerners, and those in Berkeley included and so on, they want you to believe that spirituality came into Islam through the Buddhists, through the Greeks, through the Hindus. Spirituality was there from day one of Islam. The Prophet ﷺ was the embodiment of spirituality. Remember the story of Abu Dhar? If you don't know, I'll tell you some stories. I still have about 10 or 15 minutes. You'll remember the stories at least. It is said, this is a way of teaching, by the way. Don't ask me, oh, did it happen? People teach through stories. One story is that when the Prophet ﷺ lay on his deathbed, he asked Hazrat Ali and Hazrat Omar to take one of his jalabas. Giving a jalaba to someone is the greatest honor a teacher, a prophet, can bestow upon a person. When you receive a jalaba, it means you have graduated. You are, in a sense, equal, but not an equal in the sense that you have now gotten my permission to go out and teach. He gives the jalaba to these two to go look for Al-Awaisi and give him the jalaba. And these two set out, town after town, after burying the Prophet ﷺ. People say, well, he's in that town, Finally, they go to this little village, and they said, see that village? And that man in white with his back to you, he is Al-Awaisi. So they approach, and without turning back, Al-Awaisi says to them, oh Omar, oh Ali, have you brought what the Prophet gave you? Oh, that's startling. Yes, here it is. So he takes the jalaba, kisses it, puts it on his eyes, and then he turns around, and first he asks Hazrat Omar, oh Omar, did you ever see the Prophet? And Omar, as you know, the man of what kind of question is this? Of course, I grew up with him. He was so tall, he had this color, etc. I said, no, everyone knows that, but have you ever seen the Prophet? And by this point, Hazrat Umar who was such a great man, he realizes there's something more to the question than that. Then he turns to Ali and he says, oh Ali, did you ever see the Prophet? And Ali says, I saw the Prophet only once. And that was above his navel and below his chin. And beyond that, I know nothing. This was from a man whom the Prophet ﷺ called the doorway to my knowledge. See, the knowledge of the heart was always there in Islam. And in the 8th century, you know the stories about Rabi al-Adawiyah. Who says there are no saints in Islam? or no, not saint is not in Islam. I'm just using the word because the young people are here. People of high caliber spirituality, Rabia al-Adawiyya. And I forgot to give you the names of Razia Sultana and Shajarat al-Dur of Egypt, Razia Sultana of Delhi, who are queens in their own right. Who says that Islam discriminates against women? Islam gave women a position. If the Muslims were to follow it, every woman would be here and every man would be standing in front of them. No, we abuse it. That's a different story. Rabia al-Adawiyya. And on and on. So, but until the time of Al-Ghazali, all these various streams were running in parallel. Imam Al-Ghazali, his contributions were twofold, and this is the gist of gists. First, he vanquished the esoteric teachings of the Fatimids, the Sixers, the belief in the hidden Imam and knowledge comes only through, etc., etc. And secondly, instead of looking at spirituality through philosophy, he made people look at philosophy through spirituality. Flipped it. Completely flipped it. Of course, there was some harm also that was done by some of the positions that he took with respect to philosophy, but I'm not going to go into it. Until the time of Al-Ghazali, spirituality ran like a subterranean stream. And after him, you see these great billions of a large number of highly spiritual people, starting with Sayyidina Abdul Qadir Jilani, passed away in 1186. Ibn al-Arabi, born in Spain, migrated to Damascus, passed away there, passed away in the year 1240 or 1243, depending on whose story you want to believe. Sheikh Shadhuli of Egypt passed away in 1258. Maulana Rumi passed away in the year 1273. All the way into the 14th, 15th century, Sheikh Bahauddin of Central Asia. These people were like the stars that kept the faith alive. Because it was not the pedantic Islam of the alim, because the alims had disappeared, or the teachings of these khazis, the khazis had disappeared, or the sword of the conqueror, the conquerors had disappeared. But it was the spirituality of these people that ultimately conquered the heart of the Mongol. They were the ones who were the light, who provided the light that lit the light in the hearts of the Mongols, and the Mongols themselves, instead of becoming oppressors of Islam, became the standard bearers of Islam. Within a span, again, remember this, and let's draw some lessons. You know, we are so hemmed in. We say, oh